The enormous chamber of the Galactic Concordat fell silent as Ambassador Joseph Miller entered. The space was designed to make humans feel small. The ceiling stretched up over 50 feet, and the alien delegates sat on raised platforms that forced human representatives to look up at them. Joseph had endured this for 7 years now. He straightened his blue diplomatic uniform and took his place at the small table marked with Earth's symbol. Colonel Samantha Wright followed behind him, her military posture perfect as always. She carried a single data tablet and nothing else. Unlike previous sessions, they had brought no assistance today. "The human delegation is late," announced the Zrith Emperor's translator drone. The Emperor himself, a 12-foot-tall being with iridescent scales and multiple eyes, didn't bother to look at Joseph. "We have already begun discussions on your species' petition for expanded mining rights." Joseph checked his watch. "We are 3 minutes early, Emperor Xaltorax." His voice was calm but carried across the chamber. The Emperor's translator drone buzzed with disapproval. "Galactic Standard Time was adjusted yesterday. You were informed." They had not been informed. This was typical of the Concordat's tactics, small humiliations designed to keep humanity off balance. Joseph simply nodded and opened his folder. "Let us proceed then," said the representative of the Vel Consortium, a being that looked like a collection of floating blue crystals. "We have reviewed Earth's request for expanded mining operations in your solar system's asteroid belt. We find the request excessive and potentially destabilizing to the resource balance of the sector." Colonel Wright's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. This was their own solar system they were being restricted from using. "However," continued the Vel representative, "we are prepared to allow a 14% increase in extraction rights, provided Earth increases its protection payments by 30% and agrees to purchase mining equipment exclusively from Concordat-approved vendors." Around the chamber, the representatives of the 12 most powerful spacefaring civilizations nodded in agreement. The smaller species, nearly 30 of them positioned in the lower tiers of the chamber, remained silent as always. Joseph looked down at his notes. For 50 years, humans had played by the Concordat's rules. When humanity achieved faster-than-light travel and encountered the galactic community, they'd been presented with a choice that wasn't really a choice. Join the Concordat under strict limitations or face trade embargoes and possible military action. Earth had been recovering from its own wars and climate crisis. They couldn't fight an interstellar coalition. So they agreed. They smiled. They negotiated. They complied. For 50 years. "Ambassador Miller, do you accept these generous terms?" asked the Zrith Emperor, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Joseph looked up at the gathered aliens. He closed his folder slowly. "No," he said simply. The chamber erupted in murmurs and translated exclamations. "Perhaps the human misunderstands," said the Vel representative. "This offer is final. The alternative would be most unfortunate for your developing world." Joseph stood up. Colonel Wright did the same. "We understand perfectly," Joseph said. "For 50 years, we have negotiated in good faith. For 50 years, we have contributed resources, knowledge, and goodwill to this Concordat. And for 50 years, we have been treated not as partners, but as servants." The Zrith Emperor rose to his full height, towering over everyone. "You forget your place, human." "No," Joseph replied, gathering his folder. "We've remembered it." He turned to Colonel Wright and nodded. Colonel Wright activated her tablet. She pressed her thumb against a single flashing icon labeled Threshold Omega. The tablet confirmed her biometric signature. The message was sent. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded the Vel representative. "It means," said Joseph as he and Colonel Wright walked toward the exit, "that humanity is done negotiating from a position of artificial weakness. If you leave this chamber," the Zrith Emperor bellowed, "there will be consequences." Joseph stopped at the doorway and turned back to face the assembled aliens. "There certainly will be," he agreed quietly, "just not the ones you're expecting." As the doors closed behind the human delegation, The Concordat representatives began shouting over each other. None of them noticed the small flashing light on the human communication device left on the table, transmitting everything back to Earth Command. In the corridor, Colonel Wright looked at Joseph. "It's done," she said. "After 3 generations of planning, it's finally happening." Joseph nodded. "Let's hope we're ready." "We are," said Wright. "They just don't know it yet." Together, they walked toward the landing bay where their shuttle waited to take them back to the human embassy. By tomorrow, that embassy would be empty. And by the end of the week, the Concordat would understand exactly what they had done by pushing humanity too far. Linda Hartman stood in the main control room of Lunar Base Alpha, deep beneath the surface of the moon. Screens covered the walls, showing different sections of the massive underground facility. The room buzzed with activity as technicians and officers moved between stations with new purpose. "Status report," Linda said, her voice calm despite the historic moment unfolding. Her assistant handed her a tablet. "Threshold Omega confirmed. All systems moving to active status." Linda nodded and looked up at the largest screen showing a massive underground dock. Inside it, the ship Defiance gleamed under the lights. It was officially registered as a colony vessel. The Concordat inspectors had approved it years ago as a simple transport for moving settlers to Mars. They never discovered the weapon systems hidden behind false panels, or the military-grade engines concealed by energy dampeners. Defiance was just one of 200 such ships built in secret over the past 30 years. "Begin Phase 1, Linda ordered. Alarms sounded throughout the base. Not emergency alarms, but the signal everyone had trained for. The signal that meant the waiting was over. On another screen, Linda watched as the protective coverings were removed from the quantum communication array. The device had been developed in secret, hidden from the Concordat inspectors who regularly visited Earth's research facilities. Normal communications across space took time. Messages traveled at the speed of light, or through approved Concordat relay stations that could be monitored. This system was different. It would allow instant communication between all human forces, no matter the distance. Linda pressed her palm against a scanner. "Activate QC network." The system hummed to life. Across the solar system, hidden transmitters powered up. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Gregory Powell on Mars. "QC network successful. Mars defense grid online. All ships reporting ready." Linda smiled slightly. The Concordat had allowed humans to build a small defense system around Mars, thinking it was primitive technology meant to protect against asteroids. They never suspected that each satellite contained advanced weapons that could target ships in orbit. "Director Hartman," called a young officer from across the room. "We've received confirmation from Commander Rogers in the belt." Linda looked at another screen, this one showing the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. For 20 years, human mining operations had been placing equipment throughout the belt. The Concordat thought they were simple mining platforms. They were actually weapon platforms and small shipyards, disguised as mining stations. On the screen, Linda could see hundreds of small lights activating across the belt as the platforms came online. "How long until the Concordat realizes what's happening?" asked her assistant. "The Zrith and Vel think humans are slow and simple," Linda replied. "Their arrogance is our advantage. We probably have hours before they understand. By then, it will be too late." Linda walked to a communication station and opened a channel to all human facilities across the solar system. She took a deep breath. 3 generations of humans had worked toward this moment, playing the part of the weak, grateful species while preparing in secret. "This is Director Hartman. Threshold Omega is now active. All units proceed according to established protocols. The time for hiding our strength is over." Across the solar system, men and women who had spent their entire careers waiting for this day moved into action. Ships that had posed as freighters and science vessels revealed their true nature. Defensive systems around Earth and Mars powered up to full capacity. Mining platforms throughout the asteroid belt transformed into military installations. In orbit around Jupiter, The research station that the Concordat had dismissed as primitive began deploying the gravity weapons that would soon protect the outer solar system. Linda looked at the clock on the wall. Ambassador Miller and Colonel Reich should be boarding their shuttle now. Once they're safely away from the Concordat station, we move to Phase 2. And then? Her assistant asked. And then, Linda said, the Concordat learns that humanity was never as weak as we pretended to be. In the docking bay, the crew of the Defiance prepared for launch. Their captain, Olivia Bennett, studied the mission briefing one last time. Their target was the Zrith outpost near Proxima Centauri, the outpost that had been monitoring and limiting human activities for decades. The waiting was over. Operation Reclamation had begun. Captain Olivia Bennett stood on the bridge of the Defiance as it approached the Zrith outpost orbiting Proxima Centauri. From the outside, her ship still looked like a standard human merchant vessel, the kind that the Concordat allowed humans to operate under strict rules. Zrith Control is hailing us, said her communications officer. Olivia nodded. Put them through. A harsh voice came over the speakers. Human vessel, you are not scheduled for delivery. Return to your approved flight path immediately. This is Captain Bennett of the merchant vessel Defiance, she replied calmly. We have emergency supplies requested by your station commander. This was a lie, but it would buy them the few minutes they needed. There was a pause before the voice returned. Stand by for verification. Olivia looked at her first officer. Status. All systems ready. Weapons hot. Shields at full capacity but still hidden. The other targets in this system are also being approached by our ships. Olivia checked the countdown clock on her display. Across 12 star systems, human ships were doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. The quantum communication network made this level of coordination possible. 30 seconds, she said. The Zrith voice returned. Human vessel, our records show no supply request. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Olivia smiled. Now. Her weapons officer pressed a sequence of buttons. Throughout the ship, panels slid away to reveal weapon ports. The outer hull reconfigured as pieces shifted and locked into new positions. In seconds, the merchant vessel transformed into its true form, a warship. Human vessel, what is happening? You air. Olivia cut off the transmission. Target their communication array and weapon systems only. Minimal casualties. That's an order. The Defiance fired. Precise energy beams hit the Zrith outpost exactly where intended. The outpost's weapons went dark before they could even raise shields. Again, Olivia ordered. A second volley disabled the outpost's engines and power core. Status of the station, Olivia asked. Life support still functioning. They're disabled but not destroyed. Perfect. Olivia opened a channel to the outpost. Zrith Outpost Commander, this is Captain Bennett. Your station is now under human control. Cooperate, and no one will be harmed. Through the view screen, Olivia could see 3 other human ships completing similar operations against Zrith vessels in the system. None of the alien ships had even had time to fight back. Receiving transmission from Admiral Martinez at Earth Command, her communications officer announced. Admiral Frank Martinez appeared on screen. Report, Captain. Proxima Centauri secured, sir. Minimal resistance. No casualties on either side. The Admiral nodded. Good work. Reports are coming in from all operation zones. 11 of 12 primary targets secured. The Vel research station in the Ta CD system is taking longer than expected but should be secured within the hour. Orders, sir. Begin Phase 2. Establish control of the system and prepare for possible counterattack. Though I doubt it will come quickly, the Concordat is still trying to understand what's happening. After the transmission ended, Olivia's second officer approached. Captain, we're receiving a signal from the Vel ambassador's ship approaching Earth. They're demanding explanations. Olivia laughed slightly. I bet they are. Her weapons officer looked up from his station. The nanites we placed in their systems years ago are activated. Their weapons and engines are shutting down. For decades, humans had seemed to eagerly trade with Concordat races. What the aliens never knew was that much of the primitive human technology they purchased contained microscopic machines programmed to activate on command. The Vel ambassador's ship, like hundreds of others, was now helpless. Olivia turned to her crew. Begin boarding operations on the outpost. Remember, we're not conquerors. We're liberating our own future. On Earth, Admiral Martinez watched as reports continued to flood in. The operation was proceeding even better than expected. On one screen, he could see the Vel ambassador's disabled ship being escorted to a holding position. "Sir," said an officer, "the Zrith Emperor is demanding to speak with Earth's leaders." Martinez smiled. "Let him wait. For once, they'll have to work on our schedule." Across human space, the carefully hidden strength of humanity was revealing itself. Ships that had pretended to be weak were showing their true power. Systems that aliens had dismissed as primitive were proving to be anything but. Humanity had left the negotiation table. Now, they were setting the terms. The emergency chamber of the Galactic Concordat was smaller than the main hall, but no less grand. The Zrith Emperor Exaltorax paced on his elevated platform, his scales changing colors with his rage. Around him, representatives from the 12 major powers sat in stunned silence as reports continued to arrive. "How is this possible?" the Emperor demanded. How could the humans hide such military power? Their technology was inspected regularly. The Vel representative's crystal form pulsed with agitation. "Our preliminary analysis suggests they developed technology along different paths than our standard protocols were designed to detect. We assumed their research would follow established galactic patterns." "You assumed wrong," said a small representative from the Joth Collective, one of the minor races usually silent during Concordat meetings. Several other minor representatives nodded in agreement. The Emperor turned his multiple eyes toward the Joth. "You dare." The chamber doors opened. Everyone fell silent as Fleet Commander Diane Russell walked in, flanked by 4 human officers. Unlike the diplomatic uniforms humans had worn before, they now wore the crisp black and silver uniforms of the Earth Defense Force. Uniforms that had never been seen in the Concordat chambers. No one had invited them. No one had expected them. "What is the meaning of this invasion?" the Emperor demanded. Commander Russell walked to the center of the chamber and placed a small device on the floor. It projected a holographic map of local space. Red dots marked Concordat outposts and installations. Blue dots showed human-controlled areas. There were far more blue dots than anyone in the chamber had thought possible. "This is not an invasion," Russell said calmly. "This is a notification. Humanity is reclaiming its sovereignty and establishing these boundaries." She gestured to areas on the map that were now outlined in blue. The Vel representative floated closer. "These boundaries include systems that have been under Concordat control for centuries. Systems where you placed outposts specifically to monitor and contain human expansion," Russell corrected. "Those outposts have been neutralized. The civilian populations will not be harmed." The Emperor's scales turned deep red. "The Concordat will not stand for this. Our combined fleets outnumber your ships 1,000 to 1. Russell pressed a button on her wrist device. The holographic map expanded to show a much larger section of space. New blue dots appeared throughout Concordat territory. Hundreds of them. "Are you certain about those numbers?" she asked quietly. Murmurs spread through the chamber as representatives recognized installations in their own territories among the blue dots. "Impossible," whispered the Vel representative. "We would have detected these faces, just as you detected our true military capabilities." Russell asked. "Humanity has been establishing outposts throughout Concordat space for 50 years. Small research stations, mining operations, refugee settlements, all approved by your own bureaucracy, all serving additional purposes you never bothered to investigate." A representative from one of the smaller races stood up. "The Nith Protectorate withdraws from this emergency session to consider its position." 2 other minor representatives followed immediately. The Emperor's rage was visible as his outer membrane pulsed. You threaten the stability of the galaxy. This action will result in war. Russell's expression remained calm. No, it won't. Because war would be costly for everyone and unnecessary. She gestured to the map again. We are not expanding beyond these boundaries. We are not threatening civilian populations. We are simply asserting our right to exist without artificial limitations. And if we refuse to recognize these boundaries, the Vel representative asked, then we would be forced to demonstrate capabilities we would prefer to keep in reserve, Russell replied. Capabilities developed by humans, thinking along paths your scientists never explored. She looked around the chamber. But I don't think that will be necessary. The Concordat has always claimed to value peace and stability. Now you can prove it. Russell turned to leave, but paused at the door. Representatives will arrive tomorrow to begin new negotiations. This time, as equals. After the humans left, the chamber erupted in arguments. The Emperor shouted for order, but 3 more minor representatives were already leaving. We need time to verify these claims, the Vel representative said. Verify. The Emperor's translator drone barely kept up with his angry words. They have attacked Concordat facilities. They have violated every agreement. Agreements that we dictated, said one of the remaining minor representatives. Perhaps it is time for the Concordat to reconsider how it treats emerging species. Outside the chamber, Commander Russell met with her team. Phase 3 complete, she said. Inform Earth Command that the message has been delivered. Across human-controlled space, ships moved into defensive positions. The next move belonged to the Concordat. Dr. Kevin Montgomery walked through the massive laboratory complex, hidden beneath the icy surface of Titan. Screens around him displayed data from across human space. A week had passed since Operation Reclamation began. So far, the Concordat had not launched any major counterattacks. They're still trying to understand what happened, said his colleague, Dr. Elaine Foster. Their entire understanding of human capabilities was wrong. Kevin nodded as they entered the main research chamber. Inside, a device the size of a small car hummed quietly. It looked simple, just a metal sphere surrounded by rings. But its technology was beyond anything the Concordat races had developed. Is it ready for the demonstration? Kevin asked. Yes, Elaine replied. The Vel scientists will be watching remotely in 1 hour. The Vel Consortium had requested this demonstration after initial scans of human technology had confused their experts. They couldn't understand how human ships moved so quickly or how human weapons penetrated their best shields. Kevin checked the final settings on the device. For 30 years, while officially studying approved technologies, his team had been exploring entirely different scientific principles. The Concordat races had developed space travel along certain paths, building on each other's discoveries. Humans had started fresh, asking questions no one else had asked. Admiral Martinez has arrived, announced a voice over the speakers. Kevin looked up as Admiral Frank Martinez entered with several officers and a group of alien observers. The aliens included representatives from 3 minor races that had quickly broken from the Concordat after the human action began. Welcome to Titan Research Station, Kevin said. Today we'll demonstrate just one of the technologies that humanity has developed independently. He activated the device. The rings around the sphere began to spin, creating a field of energy that distorted the space around it. Conventional faster-than-light travel uses enormous amounts of energy to push a ship through space, Kevin explained. Our approach is different. We don't push through space. We temporarily alter the properties of space itself around the ship. On a nearby screen, a small test probe equipped with the technology accelerated away from Titan. The alien observers watched in silence as the probe reached Mars in seconds, a journey that would take conventional ships hours even at their fastest speeds. Impossible, said one of the alien scientists. The energy requirements alone would be impossible using conventional methods, Kevin finished for him. We don't brute force our way through problems. We look for elegant solutions. Across the solar system, on Earth's moon, Special Operations Officer Maria Daniels led her team through the final phase of their mission. Using stealth suits developed using the same principles as Dr. Montgomery's drive system, they moved through the Concordat's largest shipyard undetected. The shipyard had been built centuries ago in the Ta City system. It was supposed to be impenetrable, protected by defenses that could stop any conventional attack. But Maria's team wasn't conventional. Charges set, whispered her second-in-command through their secure communication system. Maria nodded. Not to destroy, just to disable. Remember the mission. The charges they planted weren't explosives. They were devices that would temporarily disrupt the shipyard's power and communication systems, enough to demonstrate human capabilities without causing deaths. Team 1 ready, Maria said into her communicator, awaiting final authorization. Admiral Martinez's voice came through clearly. Authorization granted. Proceed with Operation Looking Glass. Maria activated the timer. 2 minutes until system disruption. Move to extraction point. Her team moved silently through the shipyard, passing Concordat workers who had no idea humans were among them. Their stealth technology operated on principles the Concordat had never investigated, focusing on manipulating perception rather than bending light. Back on Titan, Admiral Martinez received confirmation that Maria's team was safely away from the shipyard. The Concordat believes they understand all possible paths of technological development, he told the alien observers. But the human mind works differently. We make connections others miss. We explore paths others ignore. On the screens around them, the Ta City shipyard suddenly went dark as all its systems shut down simultaneously. The alien observers watched in shock. This is why negotiations failed. Martinez continued. You tried to contain a species you didn't understand. You saw our differences as weaknesses when they were actually strengths. Dr. Montgomery nodded. Human thinking isn't better. It's just different. And in a universe where everyone follows the same technological paths, different can be very powerful. One of the alien observers, a representative from a race called the Neru, stepped forward. My people have long suspected the Concordat was stifling innovation. We would be interested in learning more about these different paths. Admiral Martinez smiled. That's why we're here. Not to conquer, but to open new doors. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Miller walked out of the negotiation chamber. Now Vice Admiral Paul Harrison stood on the observation deck of the newly completed space station Harmony. Through the wide windows, he could see ships from 17 different species docked at the station. Some were former Concordat members. Others were races that had been kept at the edges of galactic society, much like humans had been. The Nith delegation has arrived, said his aide. That makes 23 species represented at the summit. Paul nodded. And the Srith, still claiming they won't attend, but our intelligence suggests their ambassador's ship is on the way. Paul smiled slightly. The Zrith Empire had been the most resistant to the new reality. For 3 months, they had threatened war, only to discover that many of their presumed allies were unwilling to fight for the old order. The Vel Consortium had been more practical, already sending quiet trade delegations to human space. Vice Admiral, Chief Diplomat Scott, is ready to begin the opening session. Paul followed his aide to the main chamber of the station. It was designed to be different from the Concordat chambers. All seats were at the same level. All species could access the facilities comfortably. It was a physical representation of the philosophy behind what was now called the Alliance of Independent Systems. Chief Diplomat Elizabeth Scott stood at the center of the chamber. The human woman had spent decades as a junior diplomat in the Concordat system, always treated as less important than her alien counterparts. Now she led Earth's diplomatic corps. Representatives of free worlds, Elizabeth began. Welcome to the first summit of the Alliance. Today marks a new chapter in galactic relations, one based on mutual respect rather than dominance. Paul watched as the alien delegates listened, some with obvious enthusiasm, others with caution. The Alliance now controlled 27 star systems, including key trade routes the Concordat had once monopolized. "We do not seek to replace one empire with another," Elizabeth continued. "Each member world retains its sovereignty. We unite for mutual defense, fair trade, and the free exchange of knowledge." A representative from the Joth Collective spoke up. "The Concordat claims this alliance threatens galactic stability. How do you respond?" Elizabeth smiled. "The stability they refer to was built on the subjugation of younger spacefaring races. True stability comes from partnership, not control." As the session continued, Paul received a message on his secure tablet. He slipped out of the chamber to take the call. "Vice Admiral, this is Defense Secretary William Carson. We've just received word that the Zrith Emperor has agreed to officially recognize human sovereignty and the legitimacy of the Alliance." Paul raised his eyebrows in surprise. "That's unexpected. What changed his mind?" "Apparently our demonstration last week at the Vel Science Outpost made an impression. The Vel shared their data on our gravity manipulation technology. The Emperor realized that continued opposition would be unproductive." Paul understood. The demonstration had shown that human ships could neutralize Zrith weapons without firing a shot. It was the final proof that humanity's technological path had yielded results the Concordat races couldn't counter. "There's more," Carson continued. "The Vel Consortium has formally requested a technology exchange program. They're offering access to their biological sciences in return for consulting on alternate propulsion systems." "Are we considering it?" Paul asked. "Yes, this was always the goal. Not domination, but recognition. The plan is working exactly as your grandfather envisioned." Paul glanced at a portrait on the wall of the first Earth Defense Secretary, who had started the decades-long plan when humanity first encountered the Concordat. 3 generations of humans had worked in secret, appearing compliant while preparing for this moment. When Paul returned to the chamber, he found Elizabeth concluding her address. "The human story is not unique," she was saying. "Many of your worlds faced similar treatment. You were told your development had to follow established patterns. Your resources were exploited under the guise of protection. Today, we begin writing a different story together." Later that day, Paul stood with Elizabeth as they watched the Zrith ambassador's ship finally dock at the station. "They really thought we would always accept being second class," Elizabeth said quietly. Paul nodded. "That was their mistake. They never understood that humans don't stay at tables where we're not respected. And when we leave, we make sure everyone notices." Around them, the Alliance station hummed with activity as new partnerships formed between worlds that had once been kept apart by Concordat rules. The galaxy was recalibrating around a new reality, one where humanity and other previously marginalized species would no longer accept artificial limitations. 1 year after humanity left the negotiation table, the orbital platform, New Horizon, hung in space above Earth. Its curved structure gleamed in the sunlight, visible from the planet below as a bright star in the daytime sky. Inside, representatives from 83 spacefaring civilizations gathered for the first Galactic Summit of Knowledge. Ambassador Julia Phillips walked through the Grand Hall, greeting delegates from across the galaxy. Once, she had been just an assistant to Ambassador Miller, often ignored by alien representatives. Now, she led Earth's diplomatic corps, and those same aliens sought her attention. "Ambassador Phillips, the Zrith Imperial Delegation requests a moment of your time," said her aide. Julia nodded and made her way to where the Zrith Emperor's son waited. The tall, scaled being bowed slightly, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "Ambassador," he said through his translator, "my father sends his personal gift." He presented an ornate box containing ancient Zrith artifacts of significant value. "Thank the Emperor for his generosity," Julia replied. "Earth looks forward to continued peaceful relations." Similar scenes played out across the hall. The Vel Consortium representatives offered advanced biological databases. The Joth Collective brought rare minerals. Species that had once been Earth's superiors in the Concordat now treated humans as valued equals or even sought Earth's favor. On the main stage, Secretary of Science Bradley Cooper prepared to make the summit's opening announcement. The buzz of conversation died down as he stepped up to the podium. Distinguished representatives, he began. 1 year ago, humanity chose a different path. Today, we choose to share that path with all peaceful species. I am pleased to announce the opening of Earth's Advanced Scientific Exchange Program. All member worlds of the Alliance are invited to send their brightest minds to study at our new facilities. Applause and translated expressions of approval filled the hall. Screens displayed images of the massive learning centers that had been built on Earth, Mars, and several space stations. In the audience, Professor Nathan Brooks sat with his first class of alien students. The professor had once been a junior researcher, forbidden by Concordat rules from pursuing advanced studies. Now he taught the principles of human innovation to beings from across the galaxy. Professor asked a young Vel student, why did humans develop such different technological approaches? Was it planned resistance against the Concordat? Nathan smiled. Not initially. Humans simply ask different questions. When told something is impossible, we tend to ask why and what if. When given one path, we look for others. It's not superiority, it's diversity of thought. After the opening ceremony, Julia met with the original team that had planned Operation Reclamation. Ambassador Miller, now retired, sat with Colonel Wright, Admiral Martins, and the other architects of humanity's new position in the galaxy. Did you ever imagine it would turn out this way? Julia asked them. Joseph Miller shook his head. We hoped for recognition, for fair treatment. This, he gestured to the gathering of species, this is beyond what we imagined. Admiral Martinez nodded. The Concordat's greatest mistake was assuming there was only one path of progress, only one way to develop technology. They couldn't see the strength in our different approach. Outside the main hall, on an observation deck overlooking Earth, Lieutenant Peter Jackson stood guard as two Zrith nobles conversed with a group of minor species representatives. The humans are changing everything, one of the Zrith said. The old ways are disappearing. Perhaps they needed to change, replied a representative from a race that had been subjugated for centuries. Perhaps the universe needed to change. Peter smiled slightly as he listened. His grandfather had been one of the first human diplomats to encounter the Concordat. He had come home frustrated by alien arrogance, writing in his journal that someday humanity would need to stand up for itself. 3 generations later, that day had come. As the summit continued, ships from dozens of worlds orbited Earth, their crews exploring human cities and culture. Trade agreements were signed. Research partnerships formed. Species that had been kept apart by Concordat regulations discovered common interests and goals. In his classroom later that day, Professor Brooks concluded his lecture to his eager alien students. The most important lesson from Earth's experience isn't about technology or strategy, he told them. It's about dignity, about knowing when to walk away from a table where you're not respected, and about building a better table where everyone has a place. He looked out at the diverse faces watching him. The universe shuddered when humanity left the negotiation table, not because of our weapons or our ships, but because we showed that the established order could be questioned, that the rules could be changed. And that's a powerful idea that resonates across the stars.